Let me address the people who are very dear to me and close to my heart, the survivors of this Nazi camp, the representatives of the national authorities, organizations, religions, dear guests from far away and from here. I'm really happy that my wife, one of my sons and my granddaughter are here with me. A few words about myself. I was born on January the 1st, 1926, in Łódź. My father died, and then, a year and a half later, in 1927, my wife, a widow with 5 children, mind you, I was the youngest. I had 3 elder sisters, so she sold everything almost and opened this small laundry at Kamienna Street. So we had 2 rooms, and this is where we had our own flat, housing 5 people, 5 children, and our mother. So when it comes to the conditions that I remember from my childhood and youth, well, nothing special, so these were very difficult conditions indeed. And I was a good student at school. I had good grades. After 6 years of primary school, I got to the Józef Piłsudski Middle School in Łódź. It was June 1939. This is when I finished my primary school. And I couldn't wait to see September the 1st, 1939, because I wanted to continue my education in the new school. Unfortunately, Nazi Germany attacked our country, and my plans came to naught. It was already in winter 1939-1940. We were forcibly moved to the ghetto. So the name of the town was changed into Litzmannstadt. And there, I worked in various places, mostly in metal resorts. Number 1, first electroplating shop, and then a body shop. Ultimately, I worked as an electrician. So, these 4.5 years, it was when I stayed in ghetto. I was sealed off the rest of the world. I worked very hard, and I was suffering this chronic, never-ending hunger. In the summer 1944, it was then that the ghetto liquidation began. My family, in August, got deported. And it was contrary to what we had been promised. Namely, because of our welfare, we were supposed to be evacuated so that we would work in Germany, inland. Contrary to these promises, we found ourselves in Auschwitz-Birkenau. On the very day, my mother and my Aunt Eva died in a gas chamber. Myself and my 3 sisters were deemed fit for work. And what followed was a procedure of dehumanization. It all began with us being forced to strip naked. All the personal belongings were taken away from us. It was in the bathhouse. All the hair on our body was brutally removed, oftentimes together with our skin. And then we were disinfected with this stinking liquid, phenol-based. As a result, all the bruises started to burn. And then we made to dress in ranks: the trousers, shirt, jacket and clogs. And thus we got degraded to the level of disposable items. Once exhausted, unfit for work, these items would be brutally murdered. I was assigned to block number 10 for young people. I was not employed there, it was quarantine. In the morning was the roll call, and we had to wait for a long time for the SS officer. He needed to make sure that the head count was okay. We got hardly any food after the roll call. A piece of bread and coffee ersatz, and what followed was watery soup. That was it. I suffered mostly because of this sense of separation, because I had been separated from my family quite brutally. What bothered me was this black, heavy smoke that smelled of burnt flesh. It was rising from the chimneys all the time, and the crematorium was just behind the barbed wire. So I got lucky because I managed to slip out of Auschwitz legally, and nobody noticed it, neither the SS officers nor the capo, and I joined this transportation of inmates that were supposed to go to work. It was in between blocks 18 and 19. There I met a group of naked people, and I asked, "What are you doing there?" They said they were registered and they are waiting for clothes so that they would be taken to work. And this basically triggered me, because I took off all my clothes and I joined this group. Fortunately, they never looked at the clothes. If I had been detected, they would have stopped me. And after the war, I learned that all of my block ended up in a gas chamber. So I ended up in Dernau, which was a satellite camp of Gross Rosen. Then, after a March of Death in February 1945, we ended up in Flossenburg. It was very close to the end of the war. February, March, this machine was beginning to stutter. So after a short stay there in Flossenburg, we were moved to Natzweiler, Commando Offenburg. And after a month, we were loaded onto rail wagons. They wanted to sink the whole transport in a lake. However, before we got there, we got bombed by the French forces, and it was a liberation. It was close to a machine. So Auschwitz was a Nazi camp. that symbolizes the hitherto unknown cruelty in the way people were treated. This place saw the introduction of mass murder, industrial murder, and this is where the Nazis made their ideology come alive. This is why it pains me, and I deeply regret that in many European countries, but also here in our country, you can see people marching in Nazi-like uniforms, unpunished, and they call themselves quite openly Nazis. They identify themselves with Nazism. They proclaim slogans which are very close to Nazi slogans. So this is the ideology of the broken cross, and this ideology, if you identify with it, it simply means that you are clearly identifying yourself as a genocidal murderer, because ultimately this is where that approach leads. If you proclaim hostility to others to start with, this is where you go. Basically, we're talking about racism, anti-Semitism, and homophobia. These people claim that these are virtues, just as Nazis used to do, and it is happening here in our country. This country that suffered so very much. It suffered so much under Nazi occupation. So, we were liberated by the French forces. I was exhausted, emaciated. I weighed only 35 kilograms, and I was diagnosed with typhoid fever, and I had to stay for a few weeks in a hospital. Then I was moved to a French army sanatorium in Reichenau. By pure accident there, I learned that 3 of my sisters survived Bergen-Belsen, and I went to see them. Quite a difficult journey, because there was hardly any forms of transportation available. So I went there and I was reunited with my sisters. It was in autumn 1946 that I started my medical school in Göttingen at university there. I returned to Poland in 1950, in November, because our consulates were closed in the West because of the Korean War, and I was forced to return to Poland. After I graduated in Warsaw, it was I started working as a head of obstetrics, and I started to work. I was trying to get my PhD. Mind you, these were the most beautiful 3 years of my professional life. 3 years later, unfortunately, things changed. It was 1958. So there was this party council, and this is where they decided to sack me. I didn't feel good about that. I was crushed, because I had come to Poland to build my country. I was full of enthusiasm and passion, and this is what happened to me. So there was a return of anti-Semitism. That is why I took my family and we migrated to Sweden, a neutral country. And I still live there. My first wife died in 1970 in Stockholm. She was a Slavist, a linguist, and she translated the works of Janusz Korczak, and it is largely thanks to that that an award was presented, the Peace Prize of the German book trade. It was a posthumously awarded prize. So I have 3 sons from that marriage. They live in Stockholm. 6 years after my wife Katia died, I got married again. My second wife is Maria Loza. We have our great daughter together, Emily. And in my own behalf and on behalf of other survivors, let me thank the management of the Auschwitz Museum. I want to thank them for their daily tireless work. They work to preserve the memory of the victims of the Nazi ideology, and they work to fight prejudice and hostility. So may I ask the people gathered here to rise and to honor the memory of the victims of Nazism.
Dziękuję za cierpliwe wysłuchanie.
Thank you for listening, ladies and gentlemen.